I, as somebody who's paid my money to the planning, to the building department for permits, that money should be going towards the building department and not towards the town center that may never get built. So it's okay to use the money, in my opinion, after you've shown that it's been shown that this money is going to be raised and that you're going to make it to the finish line. Because if you don't make it to the finish line, you may have to answer to me or other people saying we want that money back to be put into the building department and for their building. So if it's $12 million for this building and 7,000 residents, that's only $1,700 per resident. So that's, I've got 3 in my house, so I'll triple that, and that's how much I would be contributing. And I think if every town center task force member who is wholeheartedly in support of this showed they're up there, you know, let's put the money up. Okay, I support it, but let's put the money up. You'd have it funded right there. You'd be able to hire your architect, off you'd go, and it would not be at any reliability or expense to the town. Now, Portola Valley did a really nice job raising, and I don't remember the exact details, but I do remember at the end, when the economy turned and they had residents who had pledged money, they turned up, I think it was $70,000 short. That they've already built the building and they go to the residents and say, okay, let's pay up. Oh, I can't pay that. So where'd the $70,000 come from? Probably the town. And actually, I don't know the answer, but I think it might be worthy to know that a pledge is not necessarily money in the bank. If the town's going to use some money, I think it would at least be fair that the town center task force, or that the citizens raise at least half of this money before the town puts any money in, to show that, in fact, you will make it to the finish line. And at $12 million for a building and 29 employees, that's just a little over $400,000 per employee for each employee. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, then we'll come back to the council.
When the time is right for the council, if they agree, I'd like to make a motion in the spirit of cooperation, which I'm sure I can count on from my fellow council members when the time comes, that we name Nichols, Mellberg, and Rosetto as the preferred architectural firm, that they meet with the Town Center Task Force and work out the public outreach process outline, as well as associated costs for the design development phase, cost it and size it, and that they come back to this council within 30 to 60 days with the results of those meetings, as well as with a financing plan, in however rough form it need be.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Can I just have a comment?
Oh, sorry.
I think we're all in favor of a new town center. I think what we've had here, we're all in favor of a new town center. It's just that there's several rather important things that we haven't figured out, which is how big should it be and where does the money come from? And just listening to Mr. Crittenden's comment, $400,000 per employee, at least to me that seems like an awful lot of money, but you know, I was brought up where $10 was a lot of money, so you know, and I don't know whether I'm out of touch with things or not. But bottom line is, I think that the Town Center Task Force has done a great job. I just think that there's one more step they need, and that is to find out, and listen, they can't do that by themselves, so they have to find out what size building we really need. And to do that, they have to look at our next plans for the next 3 or 4 years. And I would point out, in answer to Mr. Crittenden again, that when Portola Valley did this, they had the people who contributed put the money in escrow, or at least that's what they said they were going to do. And the money was in an escrow account which would not be spent unless they got all of it. So perhaps that's also something we need to do here.
Jim, I'm hopeful that this motion is that next step.
Okay,
Makes sense.
well, I will vote with the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, but with the comment, the next meeting, the next council meeting is just 2.5 weeks away. And so
Well,
it may be
within the
appropriate.
next couple of council meetings, I leave it up to the town center task force to make that determination when they're ready to come back to the council.
So we have the motion on the table, and it's been seconded, so we'll have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Council.
Okay. Next is item number 19, which is authorization of to report the notice of completion for the Fletcher Drive, Ridgeview Drive contract. So, Mike, would you like to, or Jim, John? Mike, and thank you for coming. Mike has been ill this week and he's come in specifically for this meeting. So thank you for your dedication.
That's why all my friends are sitting.
Mike, I just would
That's why
I'd
I'm
like,
sitting next to
You
you.
notice nobody's sitting right here.
Mike, I'd like to point out that on the news tonight, I just heard that if you take Tamiflu, you recover 1 day earlier.
For 1 day. Oh my God. That's not enough. That's not enough.
Yeah, Mayor Whitler, members of the City Council. Yes, this item, staff is recommending that you accept the work and authorize recording of the notice of completion and approving change order number 3 in the amount of $322,483 for the Fletcher Ridgeview Drive pavement and drainage project. In the report, we outline kind of the history of the change orders, and really the issue here is the amount and number of change orders for this project. A portion of the required change orders were due to unanticipated and unforeseen conditions, which are not uncommon for this type of project. However, there were also numerous situations where, in staff's opinion, design errors and omissions caused delay in redesign, resulting in project cost increases. For this project, the town of Atherton contracted with an engineering firm for the design and construction oversight. In June of last year, 2011, town staff sent a letter to our design consultant notifying them that due to the type and amount of change orders, the town would immediately begin investigating the cause and damages to the town, resulting again from what we believe to be design errors and omissions. Following our investigation and review of all contract change orders, on November 1st of 2011, we provided the design consultant with a detailed spreadsheet identifying change orders and costs we believe resulted from their errors. On November 14th, we met with our design consultants to review the information. And actually, after the report was submitted on January 10th, we received their formal written response. There was a lot of detail to it, and their written response is currently being reviewed by staff. And we anticipate meeting with the city attorney next week to review this information and to determine our next steps. In any case, the excessive change orders and cost overruns for this project is an issue the town has with our design consultant and not the contractor. Accordingly, staff is recommending the action stated in this report to compensate the contractor for work which has been completed and accepted. So in summary, staff recommends council take action to accept the work, authorize recordation of the notice of completion, and approve change order number 3 in the amount of $322,483. Also, as noted in the fiscal impact section of the report, the project will also need to be increased by $230,278 to cover this change order. The source of funding would be grants. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Questions by council?
Well, this has come up to us before, and frankly, I think we should be embarrassed about this whole thing. And I want to point out, this was not on Mike Kashawagi's watch, this was on Duncan's watch. And, you know, we should never have gone $322,483.18. cents over this as a result of an error by our design engineers, our contracted design engineers. And my feeling is that we should go after the design engineers to get some of this money back. This was their problem, and we should never have allowed this thing to continue while we knew we were spending this much over the authorized amount. This is a huge overrun, and my own feeling is that I don't know what we can do about it now, but that it should be a lesson to us in the future that we never allow this kind of thing to happen again. I mean, our contractors that we hire, including our design contractors, have a responsibility to us. And if they screw up, they should pay for it. That's my simple answer to this. At this stage, I don't know what our alternatives are, but you know, these are my comments.
So we had a discussion about this at the previous council meeting, and I guess either Mike or Bill, if you could comment on what the plan forward is with regards to having reviewed the contracts that we'd had and the liabilities, indemnities, and warranties that were in those contracts. So who would like to?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, obviously in an open session we're not going to get into a lot of detail, but I will point out staff has reviewed this months ago. I have been working with the engineering staff, both David and Mike. We had to wait until the project was completed so that we could basically put together some kind of a matrix that shows those, as Mr. Kashiwagi said, those issues that he believes are legitimate change orders that resulted just from the normal conditions that we don't know what's under the ground, etc. But there are a number that we do believe. I think Councilmember Dobby is absolutely correct. We are looking at all the alternatives, and they run the gamut from a simple demand, which we've already sort of put them on notice, to the next step, which will probably be some recommendation brought forth to the City Council in closed session. I'm sorry that John's gone, because we do have closed sessions when there's a need. And it will talk about any potential for litigation that we feel is appropriate. Once we get, you know, the kind of the back and forth negotiation going, and I will point out, and Mr. Kashiwagi's report, I think mentioned this, but if it doesn't, I think it's fair to state that they are on notice that we suggested that they talk to their insurance carrier because this is a very serious matter.
Okay, I just wanted to make it clear to the public that.
Can I clarify that it's not just the 322,000, right? It's like
767,000.
Yeah, it's more like 700. It's all three change orders, right?
We're going to look at the entire project to
Okay.
determine what came from errors and omissions as opposed to what I'm going to call legitimate change orders.
Well, that was going to be my, I was going to express the same concern as has been expressed. I just want to say that we had we thought we had an action against PG&E on Selby Lane, and unfortunately that didn't get followed up by our legal counsel in a timely manner. It was before you, Bill. You were kind enough to look into that and determine that we couldn't proceed to go back after that. But so I'm hoping we'll be aggressive and pursue this as quickly as possible.
So I have a question. So we need to authorize the payment to the contractor of the $1.6 million.
We haven't suffered any damages until we actually pay the contractor, at which point in time, now we've suffered damages.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess the motion would be, I mean, that we go ahead and approve this and pay that, but then follow up with whatever recourse that we would have to collect the 700,000.
That's the staff recommendation, is that we have to honor our obligation to pay the contractor. He didn't do anything wrong, by the way, that we can ascertain anyway. And that we then look into whether or not anybody else is liable for some or all of this amount of money.
I just wanted to make it clear for the record that the amount is 767,000 plus, not the 322 as Sandy had suggested, and that I thought that we ultimately did settle. We didn't end up litigating, but we settled with PG&E on Selby Lane for an amount due to the increase in the asphalt.
No.
We didn't.
It was known to the Public Works Director at the time, but it was not followed up on, and the statute of limitations ran, so we can't do anything about it.
Okay, great. There are a couple of things in here that just seem off the wall, like replacement of damaged landscaping at a homeowner's address. I mean, I hope that's one of the things we're questioning. Why should we be paying for it? They damaged it. And things like utility lines that were improperly shown and were unmarked on the construction plans. That sort of is very reminiscent of Selby Lane, only now we have the time for it. But one of the questions I had that I didn't understand, and it's a very large amount, is what is the subgrade stabilization roadway?
Well, that was in count. Basically, when you open up the surface, there's a lot of moisture there. They cannot get compaction. And when that happens, what you do is you excavate all the wet dirt
To remove it.
and remove it and import dry dirt so you can continue with the job. And there were several cases where private landscaping was damaged as part of the job because of the proximity of the construction.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we weren't in a position to have to restore that to pre-construction conditions.
With the subgrade stabilization of the roadway, don't they do soils tests in the same way that they check out the roads when they do those tests when underneath the roadway to determine the status of the roadways?
Typically, when you do soils testing, it's really to determine the structural nature of the soil so you can design the pavement on, so you know what kind of soil it is, so you can design the proper pavement thickness. But what you never know is how, you know, if there's a lot of moisture underneath. And again, that is not an uncommon thing to run into.
But in that area in particular, that's a hilly area where it was known that we had problems with, even with the homes that were being built, which is how we ended up with all those drainage rolls. One would have thought that, I mean, you might look into that because Duncan, that was a big issue with a lot of the homes being built up there, the saturation of the soil. That led to all those drainage criteria that we have and soils testing by the builder, even with regard to the neighbor's property. So I don't know that in a project, when it was over $1 million project, I think it was $1.6 million, that you would have thought that they would have tested the soil before they went ahead and did the bid. Those are my comments.
I'd just like to add to your, this soils testing, I really think it's very important because, you know, we had a problem in Park Lane at one of the construction projects there where I think we found arsenic or something in the soil. And that held up everything, and it just seems to me that spending another, I don't know what it costs, but spending another few bucks on soil testing, either for us or for the contractor, and then insisting that the contractor do it, could really save us a lot of money. So I would just add.
There was another one up near Steve Wesley's house.
There was another one out there, I forget. So, you know, what does it cost to do soil testing? Any?
Well, it really depends on how frequently. I mean, you know, we're talking about a project, and I'm not trying to defend whether, you know, why they didn't do it, but what I can tell you is that, you know, soils change, and so the question always is, well, how often do you test?
To find arsenic in the soil, for instance, what would that have cost us?
Well, if the arsenic was only in isolated areas, unless you, even if you had a soils testing program, unless you know, were testing in that one area, you wouldn't have found it.
Seemed to be an awful lot of it at that point. So.
It was a big area in the Wesley thing, and this certainly was a big area, as I remember, that it held up. And I don't know if maybe in our specs you might want to, it's something to be talked about as to whether or not you're testing, soil testing every so many feet or yards or whatever. I don't know if other towns do it. If it makes any sense, I'm not saying it does, I'm just saying, has it been considered?
Well, your comments are all well taken, and certainly there's a lot to be learned when you have projects like this.
I just make one other comment, not to bore you, but when they redid James Avenue a couple of years ago, was it, in front of my house, the contractor said, oh, I didn't know there was all this water under the soil here. If I had known that, I would have done something different. Well, that time I said to him, and I said, you know, shouldn't you know those kind of things?
I just want to, and this is probably directed to the finance director, because we're going to take additional money out of the parcel tax. It seems like all these change orders for taking money out of the parcel tax fund from Public Works, and so it just seems like this is a pretty big amount. And you know, what's our remaining balance in the Public Works CIP fund from parcel tax?
The Public Works Director and I did review all the projects in the parcel tax fund. We reviewed the amended budget that was approved and the projects that are in process right now. With all of these changes and all of the projects that are currently budgeted, it would, at the end of this year, if all the project costs were spent within 1 year, it would leave the parcel tax fund with over $600,000.
You're talking, so that would be as of June 30th?
As of June 30th, 2012.
So
and we are going to start a process very soon of going through and determining what projects over the next 5 years should go towards this funding source, and confirm the current 5-year plan with the knowledge that we have today.
Okay.
And they may not all be expended by June 30th.
That's absolutely correct, yes. Mostly, a lot of projects are carried forward.
Okay, good, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion.
Well, we haven't had public comments.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So is there any public comments on this? Seeing none, then we bring it back.
All right, I will make a motion that we
Just want to follow.
move to accept item number 19.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 20, which is to consider a recommendation of the Transportation Committee to install 3 keep clear zones on Middlefield Road at the intersection of Watkins, James, and Linden, which by the way is also Glenwood, which is the street which I live on. And so although my little map says that I don't actually go into the middle of the intersection, I think it would be best if I didn't vote on this.
500 feet or something from it.
Well, one of the properties is actually, well, I'll leave it to the direction of the council, but one of the properties that it touched actually is the property that it joins.
Well, I live on James, but I'm not within 150 feet, so therefore.
500.
It's 500.
500 feet, I'm not within
Council
500 feet.
can see what you-
So therefore, I don't think I need to. Am I within 500 feet? I don't think so.
Which one is Bill's house?
Well, the one in the middle,
So what? So this one here?
on the corner of Fenwood and I'm here, and we're talking about this street.
Not within 500.
Okay, great. Fine, then I withdraw my approval. Okay, so item 20.
Oh, well, Mike, the president just.
Okay,
Staff really doesn't have a report. The report is, verbal report is pretty self-explanatory, just to consider the recommendation of the transportation.
I might just add something. This was brought to us by a resident of Lindenwood. She, as well as other residents, have difficulty getting out of those gates. There are a number of intersections along that corridor that are affected. We would like to try and start with these on a trial basis and see if it works. Clearly, keep clear isn't read by everybody, but to the extent it can help some, at least it will clear up the capability of traffic to cross over. And so we would like to at least do it on a trial basis and see if it helps. There was a question raised about whether or not that would create greater backup on Middlefield because of those keep clear zones. And yes, I suppose that considering there is a keep clear zone, to the extent you add up those 3 keep clear zones, it's backed up that much further, but it's really a marginal backup when you consider the safety of crossing over. And it would be reported back to the Transportation Committee, and we would then report back to Council.
Jerry.
Yeah, I don't have any reason to oppose this, but just a observation that going north from Marsh Road along Middlefield, there's certainly, Fair Oaks in the morning is certainly, you take your life in your hands trying to put your nose out there with your car. And the little streets on the other side of Middlefield there, trying to get out of those streets is, so it may behoove us to have staff take a broader look at this whole Middlefield situation downstream.
There were others that were under consideration. You just named these as the place to begin.
I would say I live in James, and I go out in James regularly. There are certain times of the day when in James it's impossible to make a left turn, not because of traffic coming south, but because you can't get through the cars that are stacked between two traffic lights. There's a traffic light now in Encinal, there's a traffic light on Marsh, and there are times when these cars are just stacked up there, and there's no way to get out of the street. It's hard to get out even turning right, unless a good Samaritan stops for you. But it's almost impossible to make a left turn. So I certainly would like to see those on James, and I'm sure the same thing applies to Linden and to the others. And keep clear can only be maybe 2 car lengths, so it shouldn't really affect substantially the movement of traffic. I mean, it just means that the traffic will still move, but these zones will be kept clear so that people coming out of James and Linden can make a left turn without pushing the car in front of them out of the way, which I'm totally opposed to. And I just think this would be a good thing to try. So I'm in favor of this, and I don't live within 500 feet of Middlefield and James.
We've determined that nobody on this,
But
nobody on the council lives within 500 feet.
I'm just going to ask a question. It looks like this is something that's going to be implemented and evaluated. Is there a process for evaluation going back to transportation?
Yes, that's what I said. We come back to transportation and after the 3-month trial period for
who's going to do the evaluation on this stuff?
Well, we'd speak with Mike, we'd have the input from the police chief, and we would make a recommendation based upon the data to council as to whether or not it can be made permanent.
Yeah, and on that, I have to just caution council that the cost for implementing this is about $750 per intersection, and that's the initial installation, and then there's going to be, probably every 2 or 3 years maintenance as far as, reinforcing the paint. As far as the evaluation, to be very honest, unlike a lot of other traffic issues, this one, I'm not sure how we would evaluate. I mean, it's, and when you take a look at these Keep Clear, you do see them around, and you see them for a variety of reasons. From a traffic engineering standpoint, where this is placed is for public safety reasons. Public safety reasons meaning you'll see them at at-grade railroad crossings. On Middlefield, just south of these locations, you'll see them at the driveway at the fire station, because of course you want to keep those areas clear so that emergency vehicles can get out. As opposed to these, which is really more for convenience, and it's really to try to regulate considerate driving. They are enforceable, so that's the only thing that we just want to caution council on, is that these are not inexpensive.
So I hear what you're saying, Mike, and I actually was at the Transportation Committee meeting when this was discussed, and both the police officer, Anthony, was there with you, and I think you both raised a potential safety hazard, at least with one of the installations, because of the potential of a blind spot. And I think that if I could draw it on the board, it would be, if it was at Watkins, to turn left going north onto Middlefield from Watkins. If the Keep Clear, if the cars stack up going southbound on Middlefield, and you pull out thinking you've got the clear zone, but the northbound traffic does not stack up as much, you could get you could get hit.
Well, what we were bringing up at that meeting is that, and it's really for people turning left.
Turning left off the wall, that's one of my biggest concerns at this.
There is visibility, you know, you are gonna have, you're not gonna have good visibility. In fact, one of your items earlier tonight, you also approved the recommendation of the Transportation Committee to remove parking in front of a residence, and the reason for that was because of school parking. They had a hard time getting the visibility getting out of the driveway. So in all three locations, to me, you're always going to have the visibility problem turning left. Today you can't turn left because in most cases, unless you have a considered driver, there's a car blocking you.
Or you have clear traffic.
The other safety concern that I think we expressed at the Transportation Committee, and I think this only occurs at one location at the Glenwood, where basically cars can go straight. The other ones are T intersections, so cars exiting the streets can only turn left. But in the cases where they can go straight, the concern was with that lack of visibility, there is a lot of pedestrians and bicycles that use Middlefield Road. And we expressed a concern about lack of visibility for bicyclists as well.
So I understood from the Transportation Committee that even though the police officer and the Public Works director recommended not going forward, the Transportation Committee voted in favor of doing it on a trial basis. I have a hard time. I have a family member who had a situation where it was similar to a keep clear because there was a traffic situation where people were telling this one woman to come through, and she came through not seeing my family member coming down the right-hand lane, and they crashed and totaled their cars. And it's the same situation. So the visibility is a real problem, and I would hope that we maybe fix the traffic light signals to manage them better, to time them better. I don't know, it just seems also to paint those keep clear markings all along Middlefield there. I just think it's just going to be garish. Not that safety is paramount, but it just seems that it would ruin our town.
It was not my understanding, although those were raised that was raised as a safety concern because it was really the through traffic more than anything, and making sure that there weren't pedestrians or bicyclists going. I don't believe, it was not my reading that they were against these keep clear zones on a total appearance basis, and certainly not on a trial basis.
Yeah.
If I can just say that, Mike, we have to remember that we as a council are representing the people of Atherton, not the people that are driving along Middlefield, who are generally, I would say, a big percentage of them are not Atherton residents. A fairly substantial number of Atherton residents live in the Lindenwood area. And this complaint, at least on James, I've heard from a lot of residents in Lindenwood. And my feeling is, if you can make a left turn and you don't look to see if there's a car coming down on the other side, you shouldn't be driving the car. And therefore, this would be helpful, I believe, to the residents of Lindenwood. And I think as it's been done on a trial basis, and I would say, as a resident, I will give you my opinion at the end of the 3 months trial as to how effective it is.
Any other questions from council? Any public comment? Okay, we'll bring it back.
I would like to make a motion that.
Can I make it down that?
Oh, sure.
So, of course, I'm on that road as well, and I've normally seen, I realize that sometimes the intersections get full, but I will also say the majority of times, they're not. And just as late as this evening, or this afternoon, at school dismissal time, I was on that road and every one of those intersections was open. And I wonder really, since it was input, and I appreciate, Jim, that you said that you've had several comments, because one of my comments was, it says just one resident brought this up. And I wasn't sure whether or not we needed to do a study or a survey as to whether or not this was really necessary. And I don't know what the cost of that would be. But you know, $2,300 is $2,300, and it seems that just even tonight, we've been very concerned about the money. And at other council meetings, when other similar things have come up, some have passed, some haven't, we seem to send mixed messages that sometimes we don't want to spend even $200, and other times we'll just spend $2,300 for potentially one resident request. So can you let us know what the cost of doing a traffic survey, and whether or not you think that that would be a prudent thing to do first? Or if you can even do a traffic survey?
It wouldn't be a traffic survey. It'd basically be a survey of the residents of whether or not they favor having it keep clear. But it wouldn't be a traffic survey.
That would be probably a lot more expensive than $2,300. Just when they did the survey for the speed bumps along Fairview, that was quite expensive. And I'm sure it involved other elements, but it was an expensive survey. But that is a very, very difficult spot to get out of, James. And it's not only the cars going out, but the fact that cars can't go in because those gates are so narrow.
No, I understand the same thing.
And another point is $2,300 is $2,300, but we've never questioned $2,300 when it was a question of safety.
I think we have a member of the public that would like to speak. Mr. Mayor, if you allow it.
Okay, even though we closed it, if I'm allowed to reopen,
You can't, as long as you open it for everybody.
I will reopen.